Today's show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Protect your online activity today and find out how you can get 3 months free at tryexpressvpn.com/space. That's tryexpressvpn.com/space for 3 months free with a 1-year package. Visit tryexpressvpn.com/space to learn more.
15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 10, 9. Ignition sequence start.
Space Nuts.
5, 4, 3, 2.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Space Nuts.
Astronauts report it feels good.
Hello again, and thank you for joining us on the podcast we like to call Space Nuts. My name's Andrew Dunkley, and joining me, as always, is Fred Watson from the Australian Astronomical Observatory. Hello, Fred.
Good day, Andrew.
Have you got all your teeth in?
Thanks for that. I've got more in than I had this time yesterday.
Oh, that's good. That actually sounds weird, coming back from a dentist and having more teeth than when you went in.
Well, it's a long story, Andrew, which, I'm not necessarily sure that listeners to our podcast will want to know the details. But I've got this tooth that insists on periodically falling out, and it's been doing it since 2015.
Oh, my word.
When it does, I just go and get it glued back in again.
Yeah, don't you love modern technology?
Yeah, the technology is quite astounding, I have to say. Astonishing stuff.
All right. Well, stop eating toffee or whatever it is that's causing the problem.
I gave that up years ago for the same reason. Yeah.
Now, we are going to talk about a few rather fascinating things today, one of them being the idea of colonising the moon. And it's being put forward by a very, 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 very rich man.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the dinosaur asteroid. Now, we've spoken about it before. It hit the deck in the Gulf of what is now the Gulf of Mexico. And even though we now know it didn't absolutely and utterly kill the dinosaurs outright, it was part of their demise. But it also had other effects, and we're going to talk about that. And we've had a question asking if we could explain a bit more about the WOW signal. Now, we've talked about the WOW signal in the past, and we got a message on Facebook about it. And do you think I can find the episode? Do you think? No. So I said, look, we'll just talk about it again because it's such a great story. So we're going to talk about the WOW signal. But first, we're going to look at colonising the moon. This is an idea that's been put forward by, I think he's the richest man in the world.
I believe he is, Andrew, and his name is, of course, Jeff Bezos. He is the founder of Amazon, which is a relatively ubiquitous company. And apparently he's worth, wait for it, $176 billion. And I think that's, I don't know whether that's Australian or US. Doesn't really matter, does it?
It doesn't really. When you're talking that kind of money, conversions just have no influence whatsoever.
They don't have
so he's worth 176, and his company so far has paid me $1.21 in royalties.
Oh, very good. Well, there you go. You're getting your fair share then.
Yeah. Can't retire yet.
Sorry about that. Of course, he's not only the founder of Amazon, but also the founder, and indeed the foundry probably as well, of an aerospace company which is called Blue Origin. And Blue Origin makes rockets, basically, and indeed they are venturing into the space tourism business. Like that other well-known entrepreneur who founded SpaceX, we have a person here with the aim of bringing down the cost of space travel, bringing down the cost of launching. So, and the way Blue Origin is doing it is much the same as the way SpaceX is doing it, and that is to pioneer the idea of bringing back the launch vehicle to Earth and landing it safely on its tail and essentially reusing it for future launches. So when all these competing companies have brought the cost down sufficiently that we can all get into a space rocket and go into space, Jeff Bezos has got his sights set on the moon. which once again contrasts with SpaceX's vision, which is to get people to Mars. But Jeff Bezos really wants to look at the moon as potentially, a place where we could do manufacturing and essentially set up factories on the moon, partly because the moon is, it's got gravity, so you can build things there. It's not a tiny world that stuff will float off, but it lends itself to things that actually, manufacturing processes that are not conducive to being used on Earth, and where the reduced gravity actually comes to your assistance. Plus the fact that there's water there, there's low temperatures in the poles if you want them, and he just thinks it's generally a good idea. Now, I don't know whether that is true or not, that it's a good idea, but I do like the idea of being able to send astronauts back to the moon.
Yeah, and there's certainly talk of, I think it's China doing that in the not too distant future. But how realistic is it, Fred, to put a colony on the moon and stay there long term? Because, it has gravity, but it's not nearly as significant as the gravity on Earth that we are adapted to and have spent thousands of years living with as a species. So we are made for 1G. So what happens if you live long term on a moon that does not have 1G?
You've only got 1/6 of a G.
Yeah.
That's correct. So what you're talking about here, and I think what Jeff Bezos is talking about, is not so much colonizing the moon as using it as a base for industry, which probably involves robotic technologies.
Okay.
And that is really what he has in mind. And I guess, one of the other issues that comes from this is the fact that solar power will be readily available on the moon because there is water there. We know near the poles there's actually water on the surface, frozen water, but actually there's water in the rocks as well. Because of those those attributes, you can imagine for certain types of industries, and I'm not really quite sure what he has in mind here, but for certain types of industries, you could have really autonomous operation with things happening on their own, and maybe, just a small crew of astronauts looking after things. So it's more of an extension of the Apollo missions than the idea of colonizing Mars, colonizing the moon in the same way as people are talking about colonizing Mars.
Yeah, and he's talking about putting like $1 billion a year into this, which is chump change to him, I suppose. But if you've got the money, it's probably something worth investigating because the moon is rich and untapped.
Indeed, that's right. Yes, that's the other thing. People are interested in things like helium-3, the isotope that's found on the moon and not elsewhere.
Gosh, do you think he can pull it off?
I bet he does.
You reckon he will?
His Blue Origin project is going great guns. It's giving certainly, the tourism aspect of that, which is sending people up to in suborbital flight to look at the Earth from space. That is rivaling what Virgin Galactic are doing, and Virgin Galactic seem to be on the point of starting to take space tourists up. But I think Blue Origin is not far behind.
Now he's talking. Now this isn't going to happen next week. He's talking maybe having this happen within 100 years. So he's obviously not going to be around. Unless he knows something that we don't, to see this fulfilled. But he's obviously willing to put the money in and make it happen for the future. So, I
think that's right. It's a similar situation to Elon Musk. It's a person with extreme wealth and a great interest in the future of humankind and inspiring people to do these outrageous things. Who knows where it will take us? I don't know.
Yeah, but it will be interesting. All right, well, hopefully there'll be more on this, but maybe we won't be around to have that discussion. We'll see.
I think that's right.
All right, you're listening to Space Nuts. Andrew Dunkley here with Fred Watson. Now, let's take a little break and find out more about our sponsor.
ExpressVPN, rated #1 by Tech Radar. This is the one I use. I've been using it for a couple of years and I love it. When I joined ExpressVPN, they were brand new, new to the market, but I read a lot of reviews and did a lot of comparisons. And there was just something about their business model that I particularly liked. And a couple of years down the track, honestly, can't complain. Their interface is very easy to use. Their service is second to none. I've had to contact them a couple of times about certain things that I wanted to do, and they were brilliant. So you may be wondering why I do need a VPN at all. It's all about privacy. Do you really want big tech companies, governments and others knowing what's going on with your online activity? Even if you're having nothing to hide, it just feels downright creepy. I think you'll agree. And governments are getting more and more interested in what you're doing every day. And so, yeah, protecting your privacy is what VPN is all about. And how often do you run across websites that you want to get information from only to find that they're geo-blocked? This is becoming an increasing problem, but ExpressVPN solves that problem for you. Now, if you go to our special URL, you'll see quite a list of things this service can help you with, things you may never have thought of before. As I say, it's the one I use, secure, fast, and it just works. So protect yourself online today and find out more about how to get 3 months free at tryexpressvpn.com/space. That's tryexpressvpn.com/space for 3 months free with a 1-year package. Try expressvpn.com/space to learn more, and you'll find the link details in the show notes and on our website. Now, back to the show.
0G, and I feel fine.
Space Nuts.
Now, Fred, we're going to talk about a thing that happened 66 odd million years ago, which we have talked about before. This is the dinosaur asteroid, which struck Earth and basically changed the planet for most of the living creatures upon it, and sort of was the death knell for the dinosaurs, amongst other things. Wasn't the absolute reason they died, but it certainly finished them off. But something else happened, which they've discovered through fossil records, and this kind of leads us to where we are today in some respects and some of the issues we're facing on the planet. And that was a temperature increase.
Exactly, that's right. So this is, I think this is a really interesting story. It is one of a pair of papers that has recently been published relating to the details of the asteroid impact 66 million years ago. We might talk about the other one next week, actually.
Sure.
If we have the chance to do that. But this one really turns conventional wisdom on its head, because the bottom line is, yes, the dinosaurs, we believe, were finished off by an asteroid impact 66 million years ago. There's ample
to the day.
To the day. It was on a Wednesday. There's ample. It's probably the 1st of April, actually.
Yeah, probably.
We won't go there. There's ample evidence for that impact event and for its catastrophic effect on the dinosaur population. There's also, though, evidence, as you've just hinted at in your intro, that other things were happening then. There were, within the previous million years or so, there've been really big geological upsets in the Earth. The Deccan Traps, which is a series of volcanoes in India, had been erupting and had flooded half that continent or subcontinent with molten lava. A bit like what's going on in Hawaii at the moment, on
yes.
a much grander scale. So all that was essentially stressing the population of dinosaurs. And then, lo and behold, a 15-kilometre asteroid comes out of the blue, lands in what is now the Gulf of Mexico, and wipes them out. That's sort of all relatively conventional wisdom. What most of us think happened, or most of us until now have thought happened after that, was that it was the drop in temperature that killed the dinosaurs, the Earth's ambient temperature falling as a result of the amount of sediment and rock and soil and seabed, because it was actually in a shallow sea where the asteroid landed, all that stuff being flung into the atmosphere because of the huge amount of energy that was released by the impact.
Yeah, it's just hard to imagine the plume from that impact.
Right.
Just
I think,
mind-boggling.
Would quite a plume. That's right.
And yes, you would naturally think like nuclear winter effect.
It's exactly that. You throw all this stuff up into the atmosphere, all this, the aerosols and the particles, they sit up there at high altitudes and essentially reduce what we call the insolation, the amount of sunlight falling on the Earth's surface. So the temperature drops. The dinosaurs, which are cold-blooded creatures, say, oh, we don't like this much. And very quickly, probably within 100,000 years or so, the species dies out. But the new evidence comes from a place actually quite a long way from the impact site itself, a place in northern Tunisia. It's called El Kef, and El Kef is rich in fossils and microfossils and has been explored in detail by a number of scientists, most notably professors from the University of Missouri in the US. This is really quite extraordinary stuff, because what they've done is looked at the fossilized remains of fish. These are fish fossils, and they're kind of broken up fish fossils. They're mostly small fragments. And they've looked at the details of these fish fossils, both below and above what we call the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary. And that's the geological layer that corresponds to the time when the dinosaurs were wiped out.
Right.
And in fact, it's that layer which is rich in iridium that comes from space rather than the Earth. That's how people know that it's an asteroid. That goes back to the late 1970s, that discovery. Yeah. Anyway, these scientists have looked at these sand grain sized pieces of fish fossils and have realized that they can deduce some interesting things about the environment that these fish lived in. So there are fish fossils before the impact and fish fossils after the impact. And they can actually use an isotope of oxygen called oxygen 18 to deduce the temperature of the water in which these fish were living. Work that one out.
No, I'm right on it. I know what you're talking about.
It is. It's not an obvious link, but it's to do with the way the fish actually build the minerals by chemical reactions in all the hard bits, their teeth, their bones, and things of that sort. So by measuring the amounts of this oxygen isotope, you can actually, in the fish fossils, you can actually tell what the temperature was of the water that they lived in. And sure enough, the kind of ambient temperature before the impact was in the region of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. It's kind of rather warmer than the current average ambient temperature of the Earth, which is about 15 Celsius. But this is in this region of northern Tunisia, which is sort of fairly equatorial. So they worked out, yes, the temperature before the impact was in this 20 to 25 degree region, but afterwards it went up by about 5 degrees Celsius. So the water temperature,
so it went from 20 to 25 to 25 to 30.
Yes, that's right. That's correct.
That's pretty staggering.
I think it is as well. It's a big change. We're talking about tenths of a degree change and the effect it has on our climate.
Yeah.
In terms of global anthropic global warming. That's the word I'm looking for. That's warming the climate, but at a rather slow rate compared with what happened immediately after the asteroid impact. And the thinking behind why this should be, instead of, the fact that you've got particles shading the Earth's surface from the sun, what you've actually got instead, well, that you do get that, but that collapses out of or falls out of the atmosphere relatively quickly. So the long-term effects of the particulate debris in the atmosphere are not very long-term. They're relatively short-term, perhaps 100 years at the most.
Right.
Whereas the effect that they're seeing lasted for 100,000 years. long enough to knock the dinosaurs on the head because of this dramatic change in the climate. And the scientists think that it came from the fact that not only were there particles put up into the atmosphere, but also carbon dioxide, that the impact released carbon dioxide and probably methane as well, which is another greenhouse gas, that probably these gases were released into the atmosphere in very large quantities. And you've got very rapid warming because of that. The greenhouse effect kicks in and the Earth warms up.
So basically what we are saying as a result of this discovery is, hey, this happened to the dinosaurs because of an asteroid. And hello, stop and smell the roses, because it's happening again, and it's not an asteroid, but it doesn't matter. It's the same effect.
Yes, it is. In fact, it's very likely that the dinosaur impact had a much more rapid effect than we're having, although we are having the most rapid effect in the historical record within recent millennia. In fact, you might put it a bit more than that and talk about recent millennia. Certainly the asteroid impact had a very dramatic effect on the Earth's atmosphere, produced mass extinctions. We too are having a dramatic effect on the Earth's atmosphere, and we're also producing mass extinctions, only not quite as quickly. The problem we have is we kind of in denial about it. I know everyone's talking about it and everyone thinks that something's being done about it, but I think the jury's out on that debate, and there are still a great number of people who just don't believe it. Indeed, that's true.
So that is a concern.
So ask the dinosaurs what it's like.
Yeah, well, we can't. They all died.
Oh, that's right. They've gone.
Yeah. Nothing they could do about it, but we can do something about it. And I guess that's where it lies. And if we don't, and everything goes to, down the gurgler, we'll only have ourselves to blame, and we'll have children and grandchildren who will, have a lot to say about it. Anyway, that's another argument for another day, but fascinating story about the effect of the dinosaur asteroid. And as Fred said, there's another story floating around about the dinosaur asteroid, so we'll have a look at that next week. You're listening to Space Nuts, Andrew Dunkley and Fred Watson.
Okay, we checked all 4 systems and skiing with a go.
Space Nuts.
Okay, Fred, time to dip into the email bag. Ruffle, ruffle, ruffle. And today we've got a note from Tom Newitt. Now, Tom sent me a message via our Facebook page. Hi, I love the show. Have you considered doing an episode on the WOW signal? I found this very interesting and would love to hear your perspectives on it. Tom, yes, we have. Thanks for writing, and we'll see you all next week. Actually, we do want to talk about it again, because I went looking for that episode to send a link to Tom and I could not find it. I'm so frustrated. I know it's there somewhere, but I thought
it's stolen by aliens. Andrew,
probably. And then I thought, hey, you know what? It's probably easier just to talk about it again because it was so long ago. Now, the WOW signal was a narrowband radio signal that was received by a listening device on the 15th of August 1977, and the reason it's called the WOW signal is because when they read the printout, he wrote WOW on it, and so hence the WOW signal. But there's a lot more to it than that, Fred.
That's actually you've summarised it very, very well. Because
I thought because we've done it before, we'll just fast forward through all that stuff.
That's right. So the radio telescope in question was operated by Ohio State University. It has the wonderful name of the Big Ear because in those days you listened to radio signals. Now we use radio telescopes to make maps of the sky that look just like images. Whereas in those days you were definitely listening for a signal. And exactly as you've said, the astronomer who was working on the telescope at the time, his name was Jerry Amon, I think is the way his name is pronounced. He was looking through the records, printout, and saw this enormous signal which lasted for 72 seconds and wrote the word WOW next to it with an exclamation mark, and it's still called the WOW signal. It is interesting when you look at the details. So it lasted, as I said, for 72 seconds. And that is a significant number because the way this big ear telescope worked was it sort of just looked in a fixed direction from the Earth and let the sky go past, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So as the Earth rotates, the sky looks as though it's going past. It's why the sun rises and sets and all the rest of it. And so with what you might call the field of view of that telescope, the amount of sky that it can see, a signal that is fixed on the sky, or a source of a signal fixed on the sky, would track in 72 seconds. So what it means is that this thing didn't just last for 72 seconds. It was probably blasting out before that and after it, but the big ear telescope just captured the part of it when it was in its own field of view.
Yeah.
That's kind of as much as is certain, really, because there are other aspects you can concentrate on, like the frequency of the signal, and this is in terms of the frequency of the radio waves that are being measured. A number of different values have been given for that, but they're basically the same as the frequency that is given by natural hydrogen in space. This is actually at 1420 megahertz is the signal. We usually talk about wavelength as well, which is 21 centimeters. Space is pervaded by this hydrogen signal because there's so much hydrogen out there in the universe. So it was the same frequency as that, but it was much, much, much more intense. It was a very, very big intensity signal. So, okay, that's as much as we know for certain. What about the hypotheses as to what it was? Well, the WOW is a good indication of what the astronomer thought. Yeah, maybe this is the first sign of extraterrestrial intelligence. It's still a possibility, Andrew. It is still possible that the WOW signal came from an extraterrestrial source broadcasting at that frequency, sending its signal out into space to say, here we are, we're broadcasting on the hydrogen frequency. It's what everybody's looking at. If there are other everybody's in space, here we are. This is the best way to tell people about it.
Of course, the downside is we've not heard of it since.
Never heard of it again. That's right. This bit of sky has been analysed to death. It's actually in the constellation of Sagittarius, which it means it's towards the centre of our galaxy, and that's the more concentrated part of our galaxy. It's where there are more stars. So in that sense, it is very interesting. It could have been an extraterrestrial signal, but has never been repeated. It was a cry for help or something like that. Who knows?
Could have been. Is there any suggestion that it was some kind of natural phenomenon?
Yeah, many, of course, because scientists are pretty boring people. The first thing they look for is a natural cause for something like that, and we've jumped to the perhaps the more speculative idea right at the beginning. But yes, there are other possibilities, most of which have been kind of ruled out. There is the most recent one that really got quite a fair bit of credibility was in 2017, and two comets were in roughly the right position. Two comets, members of our own solar system, which we believe would have been surrounded by their own clouds of hydrogen. So maybe the telescope was simply picking up these comets as they went past, because they were nearby, certainly relatively nearby compared with anything out in deep space. And maybe they were the source of the WOW signal. But that's had a lot of criticism. It turns out that the comets were not exactly in the beam at the right time. The comets are not really that radio bright in the frequency of natural hydrogen. And why should that have happened? Questions of that sort have always been thrown at this, and the bottom line is it doesn't have an explanation. So the WOW signal remains a mystery.
Yeah, and I suppose they've already looked into the possibility of equipment malfunctions and glitches and things like that.
All of the above. That's right.
Yeah.
Everything seemed to be working perfectly, and the conditions were right. There was nothing in the way. No artificial sources. No foreign power satellites flying through your dish at the time when you want to be looking. Really interesting stuff.
As an astronomer, Fred, do you have a theory? Just question without notice.
Yeah, well, I'm a boring scientist, so I think at the end of the day, a natural explanation will be found. And we'll all go, oh, of course, that's what it was.
Of course it was that. Yeah, I tried to open the garage too many times. That's what it was. I just remembered what we discussed last time about the WOW signal, and that was the fact that the search was reignited recently. I think the plan was to go and have another look for it.
Yeah, and have another look. That's right. And I guess in that regard, it's part of Breakthrough Listen is the current big thing in terms of listening to or looking for signals from an extraterrestrial intelligence. This is the thing funded by Yuri Milner. It's Breakthrough Initiatives. It's all about looking for extraterrestrial life, and $100 million worth has been spent on 2 radio telescopes, one here in Australia, one in the United States, to upgrade them so that they can spend roughly a quarter of their time looking for extraterrestrial signals. You can bet your boots that the source of the WOW, or the site of the WOW signal, is one of the first places they look.
The focal point, yes, most definitely. All right. Tom, thank you for the question. Hopefully we've filled in some blanks for you. We can't tell you what it was, but your guess is as good as ours at this point in time. But thanks for the question. And Fred, thank you. It's been a pleasure as always.
Great to talk to you, Andrew, and we'll speak again soon.
Indeed we will. Fred Watson from the Australian Astronomical Observatory, and from me, Andrew Dunkley, that wraps us up. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you again next time.
Space Nuts. You've been listening to the Space Nuts podcast.
Mission complete, Houston.
Subscribe to the full podcast on iTunes, Audio Boom, and Stitcher, or your favourite podcast distributor. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.